And so I thought we could begin by just having everyone introduce yourself. I'll call you out, and then just if you'll just tell us what your day job is and your commitment to this issue, and then we'll get started with the agenda, which is full and lots of important things to talk about. So Ken, you show up first on my screen here. So why don't we begin with you?
Okay, Ken Sauer, Senior Associate Commissioner and Chief Academic Officer at the Commission for Higher Ed.
Gail, you're showing up next for me.
Okay, I'm Gail Zaharolis with the Indiana State Teachers Association. I lobby and deal in policy, and we have members who we need to get dual credit licensed.
Jason.
Sorry, had to unmute. Jason Callahan, and I formerly was the superintendent of Wabash City Schools. And about 5 weeks ago, I joined Dr. Jenner at the department as the Assistant Secretary of Student Pathways and Opportunities, and very, very dedicated to the efforts to get our faculty credentialed and to increase post-secondary credentials.
Thanks, Jason. We liked working with you in the other role, and equally look forward to working with you in this role. Rebecca.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rebecca Ray-Schulte. I serve as the Vice President of K-14 Initiatives at Ivy Tech Community College. I'm delighted to be here.
Katie.
Hello, Katie Jenner. About a month into Secretary of Education, so thrilled to be serving the state and our students and teachers.
I told Katie I was going to call on her last, and then I didn't do that. But we'll circle back around to Katie and let her spend a little more time talking to us about her new role. Trish.
Hi, Trish Woldarczyk from SAL at UIndy. I'm the Director of Strategic Initiatives, and I oversee Teach Dual Credit Indiana and STEM Teach Indiana.
Thank you. Janet.
Good afternoon, Janet Boyle. In my new role, I am Director of the Rural Early College Network, but worked in dual credit in early college for many years.
Yes, you have. Mike Beam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mike Beam, Assistant Vice President at Indiana University and University Academic Affairs and Director of the Office of School Partnerships. Good to see everyone.
Thank you. Todd Best.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Todd Bess, Executive Director with the Indiana Association of School Principals. And obviously, we've got lots of teachers in our schools that we want to make sure they have the dual credit licensure. And we have lots of kids in our schools and we want to make sure they have the dual credit college opportunities. So thanks for including us.
Great. I'm not going to call people who are not showing up with pictures on my screen right now. I'm operating off of an iPad, but I may miss some. But I think I have John Elselsier next. Maybe not. Nicole. Yes. John, are you there? No. Nicole?
Yes, Nicole Schenkel, Vincennes University, Dean of Academic Early College.
Andrea?
Hi, I'm Andrea Fisher with SEL at UIndy, and I'm the project coordinator for Teach Dual Credit Indiana.
All right, let's see who I haven't hit yet. Let's see. I know we have Stephanie Sample and Charlie from our office. Jessica is from our office as well. Jake Docking, are you on the call?
I am. Hi, everyone. My name is Jake Docking. I'm Director of Policy and Research at ICI.
Okay. Ann Gregory?
Hi, I'm Ann Gregory. I am the Executive Director of Concurrent Enrollment Programs at Purdue University Northwest and the Director of the School of Education and Counseling here.
I also see three other CHE people, Liz Walker, Jillian, and Josh are all three here. Jennifer Jensen.
Hi, Jennifer Jensen, Department of Education, Director of Secondary Learning, and former dual credit math teacher.
Great. Mary Jane Michaelak?
Hi, Mary Jane Michaelak, Vice President of Government Relations, Ivy Tech Community College.
Let's see, Carrie, are you on?
I am Carrie Dank. I'm the Executive Director at CEL at the University of Indianapolis.
Let's see, Dawn is on from our office. I think I'm sure I've missed someone. So whoever I have missed, if you could just introduce yourself at this point.
Hi, Commissioner Lovers. It's John Elsesser. I had a problem with the mute on my computer. Executive Director of the Indiana Non-Public Education Association. Serve about 400 schools across the state, and I'm a third generation dual credit commission member. So it's good to be with everybody.
Great. I think Crystal I missed maybe also.
Yeah, Crystal Cater, and I'm with CEL at UND, and I am the Special Projects Coordinator for STEM Teach.
Anyone else?
Hi,
Wow, that
Teresa.
went pretty well.
Teresa, it's Terry Lambert, and
Terry,
I'm
sorry.
on. No, that's okay. Director of Transfer Indiana and work with dual credit.
Okay, anyone else? All right, well, let's circle back around then to Katie. Katie's been engaged with these issues for a long time, and as we know, came from the governor's office, and before that, came from Southern Indiana doing this kind of work. So I want to give her a little bit of time before we begin to sort of give us a high-level overview of your first days in office and a little preview of what you see coming.
Okay, well, thank you, Teresa, and others on the call. Again, and circling back to Jason Callahan, who served on this team prior to joining the department. We're so glad to have him. He led this work in Wabash, and just want to open there and emphasize, we have schools around our state, schools meaning K-12 and higher ed, who are absolutely doing this really important partnership work. And the most recent early college credit report, and compliments to the commission for writing that and getting that out to the public. A few highlights that at the department certainly will be working hand in hand with the commission and our partners around the state. But a couple highlights, we know over the years that we have increased our dual credit as a state. And we also know that, again, the synergy that some of our higher ed institutions with our K-12s and community partners have is we have a growing number of students also earning the Indiana College Core. And we know that these additional completers result in more students enrolling and being successful in college, significant cost savings. But we also know that we have a lot of work to do in terms of the equity and access to these opportunities. So right out of the gate, that's one of the items that at the department we're really going to work on is how can we at the state level work with commission and others to eliminate the barriers that our schools might face with access to some of these opportunities for kids. That's more as we set our long-term priorities and linking straight to what our discussion today that we're really going to lean in on. More just beyond that topic, a high level for you all. As you know, coming right into COVID, we're very focused on the academic learning opportunities that we have. Learning loss, I think, is sometimes a polarizing word. We're learning. Some people like to call it learning loss. Some call it accelerated learning. Some call it growth opportunity. But regardless, we have to keep students as our North Star in the coming weeks and months ahead. What does our data show? And how do we improve from there? So the academic side is definitely a priority, as well as the fiscal side, ensuring that our schools have the funding that they need to further support our students is critical. Teresa, I could dig more into other priorities that we're focused on, but I think let's keep it focused on the topic at hand here, and that is really improving the transitions and pathways for kids. And we are leaning into that and just really, really excited to be a partner to the people on this call and students and educators throughout the state.
Thanks, Katie. That's kind of what we wanted. And Katie and I will be serving as co-chairs of the Dual Credit Advisory Council. And so we look forward to working together. We started the day together today on a call, really talking with our colleagues, everything from early childhood education through lifelong learning and how we really align the work that we're doing. And certainly this kind of work sits right in the center of that. As the work between, K-12 and higher ed is really aligned around dual credit and in partnership with our K-12 teachers and in partnership with our colleges and universities. We are obviously right in the middle of a legislative session. I think one of the encouraging parts at this point is that if the budget that did pass out of the House actually has restored the $50 per credit hour for dual credit, which will be important. There was never really a line item specifically about the $50. It was that's what we had calculated, and in the last budget when we had the growth in dual credit, it actually decreased the value of that, and it went down to about $40 a credit hour. So we're hopeful that we will be able to continue to see this in a positive way throughout the session. Those of you who have some opportunity to be engaged in this, please keep advocating for that $50 a credit hour because it makes a big difference. I know we're going to hear a lot about the Indiana College Corps today, everything from why we've moved in this direction to what our efforts are to brand it going forward. So I'll hold off on that conversation until later. But I just wanted to thank all of you again for being with us and for staying committed to this work. Indiana is truly a leader in this area. And even though we still have the challenges in front of us in terms of the preparation of our teachers, I'm convinced that we're going to be able to tackle this issue just like we have others when it comes to providing really quality opportunities for our students. And we know that this makes a difference in the preparation of Hoosier students. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ken. I think that he may be actually sharing some of this with Stephanie Sample in our office. But at this rate, Ken, why don't you lead us into the next part of the agenda, unless there's any other comments that anybody would like to make before we move on. Okay, Ken, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you, Teresa. The next agenda item will deal with a high-level summary of the reports from the Indiana Early College Credit Report. This was actually shown to the Commission last week. Really want to thank at the outset Sean Tierney and his data team, and in particular Alex Parkinson, who is the one who really did the number crunching here. So they did a terrific job. Today it will be Terry and myself who will be going through this report rather quickly. And Dawn Clark, Dawn, can you please share the PowerPoint? Okay, we'll just, well, while we're waiting, and I'll just start with a few comments. The data covers high school graduates. There we are, very good, terrific. Okay, next slide, please. So the data in the report covers the high school graduates from 2014 to 2018 enrolling in public institutions. The focus of this report is on the college performance, cost savings, equity, trend lines. And finally, as a way of providing some context, I just wanted to emphasize that the good news reflected in this data doesn't just happen. There is a policy and practice infrastructure that really is the cause of the tremendous growth that we have seen in dual credit earned by students. Next slide, please. Now, I did want to say that this report, by the way, it just focuses exclusively on Indiana. but everyone should know that we have one of the largest dual credit initiatives in the country, and this has gotten high marks both from regional and national studies. The other thing, in terms of this infrastructure that I mentioned, the Dual Credit Advisory Council is a part of that infrastructure. Of course, it has some longevity. It's always provided critical policy guidance with respect to how we would promote dual credit within the state. There are also regular meetings of the school and college dual credit coordinators. Terry organizes those meetings, and they're very informative. I've been to a lot of those, and they really help. We have our partnership with CEL at UIndy, which is really critical in terms of the endorsement of high quality early college programs in high schools. We have a lot of meetings with transfer coordinators, academic advisors, counselors, and then finally, let's not forget about the support that we get from the General Assembly by way of that line item appropriation that Teresa mentioned at the outset. That is really critical, and it is something that has provided great stability for the maintenance and growth of our initiative. And with that, Terry, I'm going to turn it over. Terry is going to take the next two sections, and I'll take the last two sections in the PowerPoint. All yours, Terry.
Great. Thank you so much, Ken. So I think we can move on to our next slide. As we've talked about the growth, we still need to address the equity gaps. And I think this Secretary Jenner mentioned, eliminating the barriers, how important this is, providing access for students. So as we break down this growth and look at it from the socioeconomic status and race and ethnicity, we're looking at the 2012 to 2018 growth. So a little bit different than the rest of the report, but I think what it's so powerful to show that we are seeing increases in all of these different areas, with a 16% increase for Blacks, 18% for low income, 19% for Hispanic and Latino, but we're still not seeing the amount of growth being proportionate with what we're seeing from the white population, with 65% of the white population earning dual credit and increasing by 23% since 2012. So again, this is something that we really need to concentrate on, and we wanted to make sure everyone was aware this is data that we have in the report. So as we move on to the next slide, it's really impressive to see that students have earned almost 600,000 credit hours through dual credit, and the average student is earning about 13.5 credit hours, which, as you can see from 2014, has increased by about 3.6 credit hours. So maybe taking one or two additional courses. And then in our next slide, looking at that average of 13.5 credit hours, we then see that 45% of the students are earning the equivalent of at least one semester of college credit, which we gauge as 12 credit hours, and 14% earning 2 or more semesters. So, showing really that they are making a dent in what they're going to be taking in to college. And again, in slide 8, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into this, and we're going to look at where they're taking this, who's providing the dual credit experiences. And this chart reflects the student counts. So it's looking at the students and where they have taken their dual credit from our dual credit providers here in Indiana. Again, we're looking at the public institutions. And it's probably not surprising to all of you that 56% of the students have earned their dual credit from Ivy Tech, with Vincennes at 12%, and then the IU and Purdue system accounting for 26% of the students that are taking dual credits. So if you remember, this is the student count. So then we're going to take a look a little bit later at the credit hours, and that I think is a really interesting thing too. So we see that there's a broad array of institutions that are offering dual credit opportunities, and these are the student numbers that are participating at those institutions. So if we move on to slide 9, we're going to talk a little bit about the two types of dual credit that the state funds. And again, I know you're all familiar with the fact that the state does fund our priority liberal arts and technical dual credit. And many times people wonder what falls into what category. And so the priority liberal arts would include English and communications, math, science, history, world languages. I think the most important thing about those courses are they're on a priority course list, and those are specifically, we've narrowed down the focus of the courses that we recommend students taking. And these courses are all taken from the core transfer library. So what that means is they're transferable and applicable between all the public institutions, and then at least 6 of our independent colleges of Indiana that are participating in the core transfer library. So extremely valuable for students to be taking these courses because of the portability that it affords them. And then with the technical dual credit, we know that they are taking courses such as construction trades, health sciences, IT, manufacturing, the things you normally think of, and we'll be seeing more and more information about the work that's being done by the Governor's Workforce Cabinet and the Office of Career and Technical Education around our next level programs of study. Again, really making dual credit very, very focused here in Indiana. And the students are provided with such a wide variety of areas where they can earn dual credit within these funded courses. Ken, go ahead, please.
Before you go to the next slide, I just wanted to add one other comment, and that is Terry keeps the dual credit, the crosswalk of technical courses and the priority liberal arts courses, as indicated, come from the core transfer library. The courses that are in that priority liberal arts list and the CTE crosswalk are the basis for the counting the credit hours that are used to provide the allocation from the line item appropriation from the General Assembly. So for all the reasons Terry has already given, these are important, but they're also important from the standpoint of generating those the allocation to the institutions out of that line item appropriation.
Great point, Ken. Thank you so much for bringing that out. I appreciate that. And then on the next slide, I mentioned that we would look at the percentages of credit hours and where they were earned. And this is my favorite chart, not because it's extremely pretty, but the fact it really does tell a very compelling story. The list of institutions on the left is where the credit is being earned, while the list on the right is where the students matriculated. And so you'll see that while our two-year institutions conferred 72% of the dual credits earned, the majority of these courses were transferred to Indiana four-year public, and I really appreciate the addition of the private institutions, the independent colleges of Indiana, because we see 18% are being transferred to them. So really showing the portability that is afforded by taking these courses. And I think this speaks to the great work that Indiana has done for many years in the area of transfer. You know, as Ken was talking about the infrastructure that's there. We mentioned before about the priority liberal arts being drawn from the core transfer library. Again, transferability and applicability among the institutions. So very, very valuable for our Indiana students. I think it also reflects on something. Oh, go ahead, Ken. I was going to just mention the crosswalks.
Go ahead, and then I'll comment.
Okay. I was just going to mention that these courses are, we work very closely with the Department of Education, the Governor's Workforce Cabinet, and our post-secondary providers developing crosswalks to help our secondary partners with assisting them, the students, the parents, the students, to see these opportunities to earn dual credit and to see how they can maximize the transferability of these courses between institutions. So really being such a powerful way for them to get the most for their dual credit. And Ken, please go ahead.
just wanted to build on your point about transfer. So we have a dual credit infrastructure. We have a transfer credit infrastructure, the statewide transfer and articulation committee. These are not siloed. They intersect at this point, and that's important to keep in mind. The other thing that I would mention is because of this mobility, because of students taking courses from one institution and wind up enrolling at another institution, this is also where our Indiana e-transcript program comes into play as well. We already have high school to college as a very mature aspect of that initiative. We are now working on college to college transmission of transcripts, and this is where the having this capability will be important to dual credit students, so they can readily have their transcripts of courses that they earned at other institutions sent to and consumed by the institution that they eventually enroll in.
Thank you so much, Ken. And you know that's near and dear to my heart too. So as we look at all the—
Can I ask a question? Yeah. Or do you want to wait till the end? I can wait till the end.
Ken, it's up to you. How did you want to handle questions?
Yeah, please.
I just wondered, and I apologize, I was studying the chart, and so if you said it, I apologize. But is there, I assume there's a percentage of kids who earn it and don't, don't go on to, either don't go on to higher ed, 4-year.
Correct. And this particular, one way to think about this, you really start on the right-hand side. So universe that results in this chart being constructed begins with those students who enrolled in a public institution and who earn dual credit. And then the analysis backs up the left side of the chart.
Okay, thank you.
No, that was a great question, Gail. And we also know that some students take their dual credit out of state. And again, because of the courses that are priority courses, very transferable courses. So, with all the dual credit that's being taken, we want to see how this affects their performance of students when they get on the college campus. So our next section is early college credit outcomes. And our next slide talks about first the college going rates. And you can see that 61% of all high school graduates in 2018 went straight into college. But now 70% who took dual credit, then they enrolled in college, almost 70% at 68. And then those who took dual credit in AP, even a larger number we see at 93%. So truly, aids in college going rates. And then when we go to slide 13, the next slide, we want to look at the success in college. And again, the trends on the left from the graphic, we're talking about what we consider early college, success benchmarks are the no need for remediation, persisting on to that second year, completing all the dual credits that the student attempts. And again, dual credit and AP students show how much higher their rates of achieving this success really are. And then in the next slide, it's interesting to note that dual credit students don't rest on their laurels, so to speak, but the data is suggesting that the dual credit coursework that they've taken really may instill a habit of credit taking throughout their college career because they're more likely to attempt more credits and to complete those credits. So really helping them be ready and knowing exactly what they're getting into on the college campus. And then our final slide in this section talks about early graduation. I think that's one of the topics that people are always interested in. And again, the data is not a big surprise. These dual credit holders are more likely than their peers to graduate on time or at least a semester early. And we've often heard about students that may graduate on time. They're able to do additional things because of their dual credit. They're able to take advantage of opportunities such as internships, studying abroad. taking another, minor, a couple of minors, something additional because of the amount of dual credit that they came in with. So again, showing some of the opportunities that dual credit does afford to our students. And so I will turn it back over to Ken to discuss dual credit, cost savings, and some of the recommendations that have been based on the findings of the report.
And I want to be mindful of time. There's about 5 minutes left, so I'm really going to breeze through these remaining slides. Next slide, please. Basically, we all know that public institutions can't charge more than $25 per credit hour for courses that are in the liberal arts priority courses and CTE. Students for free and reduced lunch eligibility are not to be charged any tuition. Ivy Tech has waived the $25 per credit hour tuition for all their students. And as Teresa mentioned, we're delighted that thus far, at least in the legislative process, there is support for continuing that $50 per credit hour appropriation. Next slide, please. This simply adds up the waivers that are due to free and reduced lunch and Ivy Tech not charging any tuition. And if you add those up, you get a calculation that there are some $9.4 million in waivers that are absorbed by our public institutions. So they definitely are making a contribution to dual credit availability. Next slide, please. If you add up the dollars associated with having these courses taught in the high school and students saving money to come up with sort of a grand calculation where we estimate that the upfront savings to Hoosiers, either as taxpayers or students, results in about $160 million in savings. So that's quite a bit. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown, and we've not had this look at the amount of money that students in dual credit courses will save. So just to sort of set this table, if you look at that first row, the cost for one credit hour, as indicated, it's either zero if you're at Ivy Tech or $25 at any other institution. That contrasts with a tuition cost to a student taking that at the college outside of dual credit, where the charge would be anywhere from $142 to $191 per credit hour. At the four-year institutions, that charge would be $240 to $351. I'll skip the middle, which is just sort of a benchmark in terms of one semester of credit, but let's look at the bottom line. So we're going to be talking more about the Indiana College Core, which consists of 30 semester hours of credit. And if you were to add up the costs associated with that, if a student could complete that through dual credit, they're either paying nothing or no more than $750 to complete that 30-hour core. At a two-year institution, you're looking at, let's call it $4,300 to $5,700. At a four-year institution, you're talking about $7,200 to $10,500. So that's quite a bit of savings. Next slide, please. This is on the lower left-hand side of this slide. This is a representation of the bottom line from the previous slide. This is rendered in a way that I think will communicate to a lot of different audiences. And Stephanie Sample, in a few moments, will be talking about the rebranding of the Indiana College Core and the communication plan that we have associated with that. I can assure you that this slide on the left will definitely be in those communication plans. On the right, you will see the growth in the number of students who have completed the Indiana College Core. In 2018, about 1,200 students. 2 years later, we'll probably double that number. Now I'm going to go through the recommendations very quickly. So the first page here deals with equity. As Secretary has mentioned previously, this is really important, and it's reflected in the Commission's strategic plan. Dual credit is associated with a lot of success, but we have some gaps in access, and in particular, we've got to close those gaps with respect to students of color, students from low-income households, and rural populations that are very underserved. Next slide, please. Now, in order to maintain and grow our dual credit initiative, we need to have more fully qualified teachers who can teach those dual credit courses, and especially in the liberal arts. We do have a couple of initiatives that have been aimed at producing more of those fully qualified teachers. The STEM Teach initiative, which has been in place for a couple of biennia. The new entry here is the Teach Dual Credit Indiana initiative, which is supported through funds from InvestEd, and this is aimed at non-STEM teachers of dual credit. Next slide, please. We need to do a good job in communicating these high-value credentials, both the Indiana College Core as well as the next level programs of study. While it's great that 64% of high school graduates earn dual credit or AP credit, we can improve that number, both in terms of that percentage as well as the number of credit hours that students would be able to earn. I'm going to skip this, except to say that next to last bullet, we want to work closely with our institutions in our communication plan. And then finally, just to wrap things up, one of the things we really need to do is make the dual credit opportunities, particularly the opportunities to complete a certificate, very transparent. And we want to do this through linked open data. So we want to put this information in the hands of consumers. We'll have a little more to say about that in the next presentation. So I'll stop here, except that this transparency and the leveraging of data really occurs through being mindful of linked open data, which can make the data that we collect and link together very transparent. And we're using the Indiana Credential Registry as one way in order to provide that transparency. And that concludes the presentation.
So I know that was a lot of information, and I always feel badly because we bring this group together and we always share so much information. There's not much opportunity for you guys to be responding to it, but this would be, I mean, if you have any questions, I know I'm not going to hold to the minute on the agenda. So if there are any questions that you have, this would be a good time to ask before we go to have Steph present the branding part of the next discussion. Any response to the report itself? I mean, do you think it's something that you think will be used, or how can we use it better? Any comment about the recommendations?
Commissioner, I just want to applaud the commission on this report. It's an excellent report. I think it'll really help drive our work and clearly articulates the opportunities out there. I noticed in working with CEL as well that about 1/5 of high schools had a student graduate in 2018 with the Indiana College Core. So, I mean, if we have 1/5 already that are able to offer it, just with some intentionality and collaboration, I think we can greatly increase that. So we can have that conversation as a follow-up.
Great. Thank you.
I expect to be discussing this topic with my, our, managers and officers at ISTA. I think, I feel the clock ticking on a lot of this stuff, and with regard to our members, and this data is great. So thank you.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks, Jason. Any other comments?
I would just piggyback on Gail's concern about the teacher credentialing. I hope that we will be able to get to that in our next meeting. Again, I know we go round and round on it, but again, 2023 is coming very soon, and we need to leap into even more action on that.
Thanks, Janet. And I think that because we can see with this report in such a demonstrable way the validity of growth of early college, then I think it makes it easier us for them to pivot to the next part of the discussion, which is we can't lose sight of the fact that we're not going to be able to keep this good work if we don't have teachers who are prepared to be able to have the right credentials for that. So I think they are hand in glove, and I think you're right. We need to be thinking about that next. Any other comments or questions?
The other thing I would add, and it really piggybacks on Jason, Gill, and Janet, is what we've heard from some of our principals who maybe desire to offer the Indiana College Core are the potential barriers there with staffing or the staffing moving in and out. And so how might we acknowledge that COVID has been incredibly challenging? And yet we're starting to see, I mean, we even have some corporations working with other corporations on instruction, or we might have a fantastic English 111 teacher at one school corp, and Bluffton also needs that course, and therefore we improve the ICAP program or another such online mechanism to just really open the access for kids and use some of our greatest educators who are credentialed to further allow access to some of these students who don't yet have it. So I think the opportunity is endless, and we really have an opportunity to think beyond maybe even what we've been considering right now to just further open access for kids.
Thanks, Katie.
Can I just add to what Katie said? I completely agree, and I'm wondering if we might piggyback on the moment with staff just still being in the remote and virtual sort of, I wouldn't call it a comfort zone, but we're able to survive, a survival zone. And if maybe it's time for a small subset of us to get together and think, okay, how can we leverage virtual instructional modalities and partnering and course sharing models that sort of don't lose the momentum we've gained through COVID. If we can do anything like that, I'm sure IU would be 100% in on participating in that conversation and doing what we can.
That's a great offer for you, and I think it's a really good way for us to move forward.
And Mike, I would pause on that. I love that idea as well. Jason and I have a couple of focus groups that we plan to do with K-12 stakeholders who are doing this work. We're using CHE's data to kind of drill into, okay, who's doing it and how are they doing it? And it's interesting that you brought that idea up, Mike, because it crossed our minds, should we do it as well with our higher ed partners so that we can really, really understand this space and consider the strategies that maybe in the past we've overlooked, but that are right there now as low-hanging fruit. So love that idea.
And if we're talking about this kind of these kinds of innovations, please put us in that table. I mean, these are staffing issues, and we just respectfully ask that ISTA be a part of how we can work through these things.
Hey, Gail, we already had you signed up, like it or not.
If I'm allowed to speak, we do have a federal grant to help with a lot of this work too, our Well-Rounded Course Access Grant. And so we have met with a few focus groups as well already as we look to, now that grant isn't necessarily limited to dual credit, but we see that as one of the primary opportunities to utilize this and to make sure that we really are providing access to students. So I know we've already talked to several of you. And anybody else that's open to talking with us, well, we're happy to. We've definitely talked with Ivy Tech and Janet, and we actually put the ask out to the whole dual credit coordinators meeting. So anyway, just feel free to reach out as well on that.
But there's obviously a lot of interest in moving in this direction. So Ken and Terry, I'm sure you're keeping track of this, as I know Katie is as well. If there are no other comments on that, let's move to the next part of the agenda. And I think Stephanie Sample from our office is going to lead on this, which is how we're rolling out the Indiana College Core. Stephanie, move directly to you, Ken, directly to her, or do you want to say something first, Ken?
No, the only thing I'd say is this rebranding is really important. The core is really important. The fact that it's built on 6 competency areas, and there's a great story to tell here. And this is why the collaboration between academic affairs and communications at the commission has been so wonderful so far. And this is a great way to tell a really good story so that we can encourage even more high schools and post-secondary partners to make even more opportunities available for students to complete the 30 semester hour core. And with that, I think, Steph, all yours.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Commissioner. So as Ken mentioned, we're viewing the rebrand of the statewide transfer general education core to the Indiana College Core as more than just a new name. It's really a real opportunity for us to promote all of these early college credit opportunities in general. So in late 2020, we set out to rebrand the STGEC, and we started with one name and quickly sort of rethought our plan to work more closely with institutions and identify a name working in collaboration with them that made the most sense. And we outlined 4 key principles to help us make that decision. We knew that we needed a name that was just easier to say and easier for people to remember, one that communicated the purpose of the STGEC and its benefit to both the high school secondary audience and the post-secondary audience, because we know that both groups of students use the STGEC. We needed a name that was acceptable to most of our secondary and post-secondary partners. And this last principle is really the most difficult, and one that you can't really achieve with a new name or a brand alone, and we'll get to that later. But we needed a way to balance the importance of the Indiana College Core's guaranteed applicability across Indiana's public institutions with the importance of thoughtful student advising. We talk about intentional dual credit. We needed a way to communicate that. So we got some options together. We held several meetings. We asked our partners to provide their feedback, and we heard from all 7 public institutions, as well as our friends at the Workforce Cabinet and the Department of Education. And we announced a new name, the Indiana College Core, along with the 2021 Early College Credit Report. Along with that rollout, we made sure that we made it clear to all of our partners that this was just the first step, that we would work with them to develop a really thoughtful outreach and communications suite of resources for folks at the secondary and post-secondary level to help us better communicate the value of College Core and early college credit in general to practitioners, students, families, and communities. We're going to overview that right now. So these are some big goals, and they're aligned to the Commission for Higher Education strategic plan as well. So as we roll this out, we're thinking beyond just the new name to ways that we can use this opportunity to promote more blurring the lines between secondary and post-secondary education. So we want to talk about the Indiana College Core through the lens of how it supports Indiana's 60% goal for post-secondary achievement. We want to build more consensus around the value of early college credit generally and credential completion at the secondary level. We want to help more Indiana high schools offer the Indiana College Core and recognize them when they do. We want to encourage more of our independent colleges to offer and accept the Indiana College Core. I think Ken and Terry have both talked about this, but we need ways to gather better data and share that data and information around which schools offer the Indiana College Core and other early college credit opportunities. And it's also a way for us to communicate other transfer pathways that are available to Indiana students in ways that we haven't before. Ultimately, we want to grow the number of students who are earning the Indiana College Core and transferring it to save time and money. I think part of this that we probably should put in writing in our communications plan is to close the equity gaps that persist. And finally, you're going to hear from PJ McGrew, I think, maybe later in this meeting, but anything we can do to support and coordinate and form similar communications with Indiana's next level programs of study as well. Anything we can learn through this process that will support that effort. So we launched the new brand with the Early College Credit Report. We are now thinking through the process of how we spread the word about that rebrand and about early college credit messages in general. So we'll be working very closely at the Commission with Secretary Jenner and the Department of Education on some joint communications to help get the word out. And we'll be looking to our partners, many of them who are part of this meeting, to help us communicate and amplify those messages. Meanwhile, we're going to launch a coordinated effort to gather input on the kinds of resources and outreach materials that will be needed by high school educators and our college partners as well. So we'll send out a survey pretty soon here, and we'll cast a wide net to gather a broad range of input from people. Then our plan is to use that input to help us develop initial materials this spring. Then we'll follow up with another survey and give people an opportunity to provide direct feedback on those resources. And then we'll finalize those resources this summer and release them with the next academic year in fall 2021. So you noticed, we talked about this a little earlier and you saw this in the last presentation, but we'll be using as many of these type of infographic sort of presentations, not just for the Indiana College Core, but for transfer in general as we build these materials. Here's diving down into our plan for those surveys and the stakeholders that we want to engage. I think we've covered just about everybody here in this meeting, but later on, feel free to offer any suggestions. If we're leaving anybody out, we'll be sure to include as many stakeholders as we can. And I thought this would be neat to include. These are some early ideas for consideration that we'll probably include in that initial survey just to get people's juices flowing and more good ideas to add to our communications plan. One is some plug and play content for school websites about the Indiana College Core that includes sort of the logo and some basic information for parents and students about what it is and who should pursue it. A digital toolkit for all of our partners who interact with students to help them make decisions about which early college credit courses to take. One cool idea is sort of a Indiana College Core designation for Indiana high schools, sort of like a blue ribbon opportunity or a cell endorsement. We want to do, as I said earlier, a lot of infographics, visual cues to help counselors, educators, and parents understand the core and how it works. And I think this one is going to take some time and a lot of collaboration with our partners, but good information about Indiana's institutions and how the Indiana College Core may or may not apply to different programs of study, and which courses students should pursue as they're doing it. And of course, from a communication standpoint, we want to gather as many student success stories as we can along the way to share how students following different post-secondary paths have used the College Core successfully. Here's some questions to get us started. I don't know if we have much time to go through it right now, but we'll be reaching out to all of you for more of your input and thoughts on this communications plan and how we can spread the word about the College Core.
Any questions for Steph about this? I hope you're as excited as we are. We think this is really timely and it's going to really help getting our message out. So, but very interested in your response and your ways to help us do this in even a better way. And as you can see, there's going to be lots of opportunity for outreach here.
Okay.
So I think next we're moving to.
Well, one thing, Teresa, we just wanted to say a few words about the criteria for determining the delivery site for the College Core. I sent that out earlier today. Don't want to go through any of the details there. Not to say that we wouldn't like any feedback from you, but I just wanted to hit a few high points, and some of the institutional partners have already seen earlier drafts of this. But the idea of having a set of criteria for determining when we can designate a particular high school as offering the Indiana College Core is this the whole idea of intentionality and sustainability. So we don't want to list a high school site if a student through some aggressive course taking on their own happens to earn it there. What we're interested in is a partnership between the high school and one or more post-secondary partners to say, yes, this is a delivery site for the core. Students who are part of the classes, the cohorts who go through that high school will have the availability of the core to earn the core through dual credit. Now, this involves designating a primary post-secondary partner. That partner has some duties associated with this. In particular, is the item number 3C, which is to coordinate the delivery of courses at that site. So this might involve partnerships with other post-secondary institutions. It could involve telecommunications, as was indicated earlier. This is an important way in which we can reach high schools, particularly in rural areas. AP exams, maybe there is an appropriate use of dual enrollment courses in a particular setting. In any case, what we want, this criteria is intended to make sure that we have a commitment for students to have the courses and other ways to earn that core at that particular high school. And the final point I'd like to make is that we want to be very transparent about this. So when we have all of these high schools that have a partnership with one or more post-secondary partners, we want to be able to identify those publicly so that it's easy to access where those high schools are. Hopefully, that will encourage high schools where the Indiana College Core is not available to think about how they might provide those opportunities to their students. We know that there are a number of high schools that are fairly close to doing that, but they're not quite to the point where they can have that sustained commitment to offer the courses needed for people to complete the post-secondary, to complete the core, the Indiana College Core. So in any case, this is what's behind these criteria. We think if we do this right, there might be some transference to a similar set of criteria that might be used on the next level programs of study. So anyway, I just wanted to briefly touch upon that. Again, we didn't go through the details, would welcome any comments when you have a chance to look at those, and we will continue to refine these and hopefully finalize them in the coming weeks so we can then use this to identify those high schools where the core can be completed.
Gail?
Yeah, I just have a quick question, Ken. Do we have a ballpark percentage of how many high schools? I know they haven't done all these things because these are new things we're now saying we want to be intentional about it, but how many at least deliver 15 of the 30?
Well, let me respond in this way, Gail. Ivy Tech has supplied data that suggested that there are over 100 high schools at which students earned the core. Now, in some cases, in 2020, in some cases, there were a very small number of students who completed that core at a high school, like 1 or 2, less than 10. But there were several dozens that had significant numbers of students complete the core in 2020. And although, as you say, we didn't have the criteria put in place until now, we're just beginning to develop this, I would suggest that those dozens of high schools would meet these criteria. Beyond that, I think one of the ideas that we've tossed around is once we have identified the initial set of sites that would meet these criteria, we would then do a survey working through our post-secondary partners to identify those high schools that are close to meeting the criteria for being designated as a delivery site for the Indiana College Core.
All right. Ken, did you want to hit on this addition of digital competencies in this discussion now?
Well, the only thing I'd mention there is that, as I think most of you know, the Indiana College Core consists of 6 competency areas, 3 foundational intellectual skills, oral, written communication, quantitative reasoning, as well as 3 ways of knowing: scientific, social and behavioral, humanistic, artistic. As a result of the Brookings study, the GPS study, which has recently been announced, one of the recommendations that came out of that study was to incorporate digital competencies into the set of competencies that students must master in order to complete the Indiana College Core. So we've got a number of activities, and again, going back to our transfer infrastructure I referenced before, we've got the groups in place who can then, who are now in the process of identifying best practices, either outside the state, within the state, as to what would constitute a good set of digital competencies that students should be able to master as part of this core. And then we've identified that each of the institutions has suggested people to serve on a panel of faculty experts in this area who would then finalize these competencies. We hope that work can be done by the end of the academic year, and then we can talk about how that would be incorporated into the core going forward.
Thank you. Well, stay tuned. You'll be hearing more about that in the future, I'm sure.
Hey, Teresa.
So I think
the list of questions that Stephanie had at the end of that, they were discussion questions, and I looked at them pretty quickly, but I think one of them, it triggered my thought in maybe strategically engaging Todd Bess, who I think is on this call, and the Principals Association, because it talked about, there are some high schools who want to offer the core and just are not able to yet. And that question on the discussion talked about, what barriers are in the way. And some barriers might be local, but some barriers might be at the state level. So I have a lot going on behind me. So the dog and my daughter, sorry about that. That's not usual. But anyway, I just wondered about if we could make sure to connect with Todd Bess and others to talk through the barriers to see how we might overcome that. And if Todd's on, maybe he wants to chime in, not to put him on the spot, but maybe he does.
Dr. Jenner, always glad to be put on the spot by the Secretary of Education. No problem there. So absolutely want to be a part of that.
You can pay me back sometime.
That's okay. And I would want to know too, just initially thinking through the whole idea of those delivery site criteria and the impact to our high schools, that if they're call it close, but struggling in getting there, and the school next to them is there, we're creating that competition, and I can see some healthy pieces to that. I can also see some unintended consequences to having schools next to each other. Some are delivery sites, some are not. So just interested in being a part of that further discussion and how that criteria comes together.
Yeah, and Todd, I would add, I mean, my question is, if there's one high school that, again, where students have access, another high school where students don't, how might we find ways to to allow students from both high schools access to these courses. And Ken, earlier you mentioned targeting rural. Some of the data that we've studied, we have a lot of access issues in some of our urban schools. And so there's just a real opportunity, I think, there that we're going to have to rethink our strategies, and maybe even how we've always done it in the past, and do more working together and celebrating some models that are doing that. So appreciate you bringing up that point, Todd, and maybe we could, I don't know if the intent was to have a subcommittee kind of look at what are some of the barriers for schools that want to do this. I don't know what the thought is there, but I'm glad to work with Todd and others to kind of think through that, if that would be helpful.
Yeah, I think that would be great. And I just wanted to say, while you definitely have to be aware of unintended consequences, we really meant this to be a constructive challenge, an opportunity to try to think out of the box and to think in ways to provide opportunities and collaboration beyond what's currently occurring. So that's at least what that's our mindset going into this.
Absolutely, and I think that's possible. Just always conscious of how the schools are working together, and the communities that are often next to each other, and some of those dynamics. So we'll find a way to make it all work.
Thank you.
Great. That sounds perfect. Good way to go forward. So let's move. I think PJ McGrew is on the phone or on the call, if I'm right. And I believe I'm supposed to pass it over to him now for a discussion of next level programs of study.
All right. Thanks, Commissioner. You all might remember, I believe I attended the meeting in December, gave a brief overview of the programs of study, especially as it related to where modern apprenticeship or work-based learning might be able to fit in. So I appreciate being able to join you today to talk a little bit further about the programs of study work, because it really does tie into the Indiana College Core and where that is going, and how we can have a technical skills equivalent to that first year at post-secondary through the program of study work. So, we have been working over the last couple of years now on this, and are really excited to roll it out and to have schools begin offering this as early as next year. We do have 12 schools that are participating in a pilot this year. And then have hosted over 200 schools, about 400 principals and counselors over the last couple of months to do a deeper dive on what implementation for next year looks like. We could not have pulled this off without a great partnership between Ivy Tech and Vincennes and the Commission for Higher Education. Todd, I know that you're on the call. You were able to help us pull together a group of principals to talk through delivery models and how we could really make this work, regardless of whether a student was participating in CTE at their home school or going to a career center. So I kind of outlined, these questions the last time that we met. Us looking at and wondering why CTE didn't provide all students to master the same skill set if they were participating in the same courses, why our dual credits weren't aligned to specific credentials, and asking ourselves why weren't more high school students earning a stackable credential before they graduated. So these really led us to think through the fact that it was time to rethink career and technical education, and the fact that CTE, secondary CTE in particular, can be more than just exploration. It can be exploration paired with preparation. Career and technical education in high school should be a college and high school program or an early college program. This really builds off of the opportunity that is presented by graduation pathways, the opportunity that's presented by the reauthorization of Perkins, which is that federal law that governs CTE. President Trump signed that into law in 2018 that really kind of forced states to start looking at how CTE was being delivered in their states. And, you know, we can really capitalize on opportunities for students that need it the most. When we look at our CTE students, in particular, our CTE concentrators that are now going to be a part of graduation pathways, I think it's health sciences is our pathway that the most students matriculate to post-secondary, and yet we only have about 47% of those CTE concentrators that are going on to post-secondary. So how do we really start to pair more intentionally our secondary coursework with our post-secondary coursework to get students some of those industry recognized credentials and those post-secondary credentials before they graduate high school? One important concept that was outlined within that reauthorization of Perkins was the idea of programs of study. And programs of study really outline that students should have an opportunity to participate in non-duplicative coursework starting in high school and matriculating on through post-secondary. And so that's really what we did with the CTE Next Level Programs of Study redesign. We looked at what was happening in that secondary space, how that was translating to dual credit, and here's just one example of where we find better opportunities for better alignment. We have a secondary course title, Advanced Manufacturing 1. Well, that course right now, you can see on the dual credit crosswalk maps to 9 different courses at Ivy Tech. And those are just the Ivy Tech courses, not to mention the Vincennes courses. There's a variety of courses here. Some of them are in manufacturing specifically. Some of them are not. And so how do we make sure that if our students are participating in Advanced Manufacturing 1, given that there is a set of standards for our high school students, that all students are able to take those standards, translate them to the same post-secondary credit in a degree pathway moving forward. And that was really what we did when we began this journey. How we got here, part of it is the variability in our course offerings. Most of our CTE courses are currently offered between 1 to 3 credits per semester. Inconsistent updates to standards. Some of our CTE courses have not had a standards update since 2010. And we really had 2 different systems that were operating independent of one another. The DOE had oversight of secondary CTE, DWD had oversight of post-secondary CTE, and a lot of times there was not the backward build or designing process that was needed to be put in place to make sure that that alignment existed. And so we moved the Federal Perkins Authority underneath the Governor's Workforce Cabinet in 2019. And really began our work around these redesigned principles. We wanted to make sure that our CTE courses were aligned to 1-year credential programs, which is the TC at Ivy Tech or the CG at Vincennes that stacked into degrees. Logical pairs of courses. We have 1-year courses and course requirement in high school for our advanced courses. And oftentimes students were only getting 1 semester's worth of dual credit. So how can we make sure that we really had that 1-for-1 alignment piece and we were pairing those courses together in a way that made sense? Our post-secondary courses that were not on the dual credit crosswalk, we have embedded in a capstone experience to allow for them to participate in those dual enrollment opportunities where need be, or that capstone now is flexible. Students could participate in a work-based learning experience after they have made it through their concentrator sequence. Consistent delivery of content. We want to make sure that if we are expecting students to become CTE concentrators now as a part of graduation pathways, that a CTE concentrator means the same thing for all of those students. Currently, right now, because of that variability of courses or credits, we might have a CTE concentrator that graduates with 12 high school credits, or we might have one that graduates with 4. And so we want to make sure that they're all learning those same standards if we are going to use that for graduation pathways. And then we had a real focus on credential attainment while students were in high school. So that could be anything from an industry recognized certification that's embedded in our courses, or as I mentioned, going all the way through the full-on pathway while in high school, they would have the opportunity to complete that TC or CG, the technical credits that were required for those. And we're asking schools to allow or to provide more opportunities for our CTE students to earn the academic dual credit that would be required to finish up that TC or CG as well. The advantages of this, it now becomes a CTE concentrator becomes comparable for each pathway. And across school districts, students can more easily transfer across districts. They have more opportunities to explore multiple pathways. I know that was kind of one area of pushback when graduation pathways first launched, was that we were putting students on these paths before they had an opportunity to explore. Because of the principles course that we have designed for many of these pathways, it's applicable to multiple pathways now, so they can do a little bit deeper exploration their sophomore or junior year than they otherwise would have. That capstone course I already mentioned, it's going to provide those opportunities to complete the technical courses for the TC or the CG, or they can customize that for that work-based learning. And each program of study now is going to have an opportunity for students to complete at least 3 different graduation pathway options, which we thought was important. Embedding those industry certifications, which would count for graduation pathways, earning the requisite number of dual credits for grad pathways, being a CTE concentrator, and then always, our CTE students would have the opportunity to also earn a technical honors diploma, which would count for grad pathways as well. So here's kind of an overview of the courses. This principles course, concentrator A course, and concentrator B course are pretty analogous to how our CTE centers are currently delivering Welding Technology 1. They're offering Welding Technology 1 for 6 credits for the entire school year, 3 credits each semester. And so what we did when we looked at that, we said, look, we can get all students through the same pathway if we break up Welding Technology 1 into smaller class sizes that would allow schools that might only have an opportunity to fit 1 CTE course into a student's schedule each year. If we broke those down into these smaller courses and allowed sophomores to begin enrolling in these courses. You can see underneath this the dual credits that would be aligned to each of these courses, and then that pathway capstone course there at the end, which would include some courses that might need a dual enrollment. We are not requiring dual credit or dual enrollment for any of our courses. We have just taken the skills and competencies that our post-secondary institutions have outlined for these courses and writing our high school standards to those same skills and competencies. So if they do have a dual credit licensed instructor, they could get dual credit for it, but by no means are we requiring that dual credit be offered. We're encouraging it, but it's not required. Our course enrollments, the flexibility was key here. That was one of the themes when we worked with principals and CTE directors over the last 2 years on this redesign. We wanted to make sure that students could take 1, 2, or 3 courses per year, especially, no real changes for our CTE centers that are offering half-day programs. And then but still allow for that autonomy of instructors to be able to teach those courses how they so choose. So if you co-enroll a student in all 6 of these credits in order to receive funding and for them to make it through all these courses throughout the year, you could teach them concurrently or sequentially, however you make that makes sense in terms of pulling standards from each of these courses and teaching them in a manner that you so choose. The student progression and how they're going to progress through a pathway. There's been lots of questions about our principles course and if that's going to replace introductory courses. Introductory courses are meant to explore a career cluster at a very high level, while principles courses are aligned to dual credits and really start to take a deeper dive into the pathway. So they're both going to continue to exist, and students would progress, 8th, 9th grade, taking that preparing for college and careers and introductory course. And then sophomore year, maybe starting with the principles course, concentrator A course, concentrator B course, and then the pathway capstone course there at the end. If students do go to a career center, in all likelihood, they would take the principles course, the concentrator A course, the concentrator B course their junior year, all paired together, and then the pathway capstone course, they would be able to enroll in that for a full 6 credits still their senior year. Our next steps, looking for opportunities at better alignment from secondary to 2-year to 4-year institution. There are a number of pathways that we know we have work to do in making sure that there is that alignment from secondary to Ivy Tech and Vincennes to our 4 years, something like education pathways, computer science, healthcare, engineering, et cetera, where right now we really have exploratory pieces in place, and we know that you need a bachelor's degree to be able to move forward in some of those areas. Working with CHE and our post-secondary institutions that are awarding dual credit for CTE coursework. This primarily is with our four-year institutions right now. I know my team and Ken and Terry have already started to have meetings with our four-year institutions to see what that might look like, how what they're currently offering for dual credit could translate and back map to the Ivy Tech and Vincennes courses that we have included in the programs of study. And so we're just really excited about this. We know there's a lot of interest from our schools, believe in this model, getting students through the same content and criteria moving forward, and looking forward to rolling this out over the next couple of years. So I'm happy to answer any questions anyone might have on the program of study.
We have a couple minutes if there are questions. Not, I know PJ will be around. Okay, well, thanks. That's been really important work. I know you guys have been working hard on this, and I think now we need to make sure we get the message out and we're implementing it with fidelity to what the purpose has been for all this good work. So thank you. Ken, we have just about 10 minutes left for this meeting, a little less than 10 minutes. And I know we have a couple other updates on Teach Dual Credit and the data sharing agreement. Could you kind of move us along on that, knowing that people probably have to get off at 3:30 for other calls?
Sure thing. And so first of all, let's turn to Trish Waldarczyk. The Teach Dual Credit Indiana is our non-STEM Teach outreach effort to qualify dual credit teachers in the liberal arts, and our partnership with CEL is absolutely critical in accomplishing this, and Trish is going to provide a quick overview of where things stand.
Thank you, Ken. So I just wanted to do just a really quick recap, and we're so excited to give an update on Teach Dual Credit Indiana. And some of you may remember from the presentation in October to this group, we provided information about the launch of the program. So just a quick reminder, Teach Dual Credit Indiana, it's made available by a grant from InvestEd to the Commission and administered by CEL at UIndy. And we're working hard to increase the number of teachers credentialed to teach dual credit in the non-STEM liberal arts discipline. So next. These are the semesters that I shared would be offered throughout the program. So you'll see there are at least 7 semesters, but likely 9 to 12 semesters given the shorter academic semesters that some higher education institutions use. For instance, one of our participating higher eds is already offering a second course in this winter spring semester for their accepted discipline area. So those higher eds, they proposed the courses in November, and we, CEL and the Commission, reviewed the courses, vetted them with several dual credit providers, and accepted 1 to 3 courses in each of the discipline areas. And then teachers applied to the program beginning in December. And once we verified them, quickly accepted their application, a teacher could register for 1 winter spring course. Next. So these are the courses that were offered for registration from the participating higher ed institutions. As I mentioned, there's a relatively short time span for teachers to apply and register, and you can see that there are a few courses that didn't have enough teachers registered to move forward. But we did have 83 who registered for a course, and given where we are with a pandemic and all that's on a teacher's plate right now, we felt like that was a good solid number. We're already partway through the winter spring semester, and we have a larger number of teachers now who have applied and been accepted. So we do anticipate that those summer semesters will have larger registration numbers. Next. Just a couple dates that we think is important for you all to know. Number of teacher applications that we have had as of February 13 is 146. We had a few more teachers apply. You know, there's still some confusion about who needs to be credentialed for dual credit and certainly which program, you know, they're relevant for. So if they were in a content area that could be served by STEM Teach, we've referred them to our STEM Teach program. And if they were, you know, in a CTE area, we've simply explained that this is this program, you know, is not credentialing teachers who teach CTE courses. Let's see, from the higher ed side of the house, we do have second round proposals due this Friday, February 19th. So we'll be mapping out our entire program catalog after that date. We are pretty excited to be presenting alongside the commission in a statewide webinar by Ivy Tech for administrators and dual credit teachers on February 24th. And then our registration for Summer 1 will be quickly upon us. It starts on March 15th. Next. We also want you to know that the website is completed. We were still using a temporary website back in October. It's loaded with content. It looks fantastic. If you'd like to take a look at it, we have the address in the chat. You'll see there's several menus across the top. There's a section dedicated particularly to the participating higher eds. And then, you know, the most visited sections of our website are the teachers and courses pages. So we always keep that up to date, post announcements, etc. there. So just visit it often to see how everything is progressing. Next. The teacher portal, this is only for teachers. It's used specifically for them to apply, register for courses, take a look at their course taking patterns. That's up and running. This is simply just a screenshot of the first portion of the application where they fill out contact information, educational background, some school info, their DOE license number. Really, the application takes probably about 5 to 8 minutes to apply. If you know your address and your school address and, you know, have your acknowledgement letter ready from your principal, it goes very quickly. Next. So we wanted to share what our applications look like to date. So we're always kind of mapping out how our programs, you know, are looking by county across the state. So in the shaded areas, you should be able to see a number. That number is the number of teacher applications that we have received from that county. So for counties who had equal to or greater than 5 teacher applicants, they're in that table on the left. You can see Marion, St. Joseph, and Elkhart have the largest number of teacher applicants so far. And any other county with a number on the map really just has 4 or less teacher applicants. We work hard, you know, to recruit teachers in really all of those counties. Next. This slide is interesting as well. So it represents the education and experience of the teacher applicants. So again, total number of verified applications is 146. 84 of those teachers have a master's degree. 37 of them are currently teaching dual credit and 47 are not. 19 of those applicants do have some graduate credit towards a master's degree. And of that, 19 are currently teaching dual credit and 10 are not currently teaching dual credit. We have 43 teachers who have applied who hold a bachelor's degree. 13 of them are teaching dual credit and 30 are not currently teaching dual credit. And as an aside, as we shared before, we prioritize and offer registration to teachers who currently have a master's degree. And just, you know, on the other side of that table, the number of teachers of teaching experience for the applicant pool looks like 89 to be exact have 10 or more teaching experience, 10 or more years of teaching experience. And then finally, next slide. This is the demographic profile of teachers in our applicant pool. We have 104 female teachers, 41 male teachers, and 1 who preferred not to answer. For the ethnicity of those teachers, 129 indicate that they are not Hispanic, 10 indicate that they are Hispanic, and 7 preferred not to answer. For race, please understand, we do have all of the races represented for selection in our application. but 136 declared their race as white, and 2 declared as Black or African American, and 8 preferred not to answer. Certainly, in numerous conversations with the Commission, we continue to work hard to recruit and serve teachers of all races and ethnicities. So we dug a little bit deeper in this area, and we put together the following slide of demographic data for Indiana teachers as a whole. And Carrie Dank, our executive director from CEL, we planned on him just talking a little bit more to this data.
Yeah, so I think this is important. I wanted to make sure everyone is aware of this. In our high schools, in our secondary schools across the state, we've got about 17% of the teachers are either Black or Hispanic. However, when you look at who teaches dual credit courses in the state of Indiana, about 2% of those teachers are Black and 2% of the teachers are Hispanic. So there is a pretty significant gap, even knowing that we have a shortage of minority teachers in the classrooms as a whole. So this is something that CEL would have great interest in more conversation at a point in time at which we have a little more time. But I wanted to put it in your radar so that everyone is aware of this issue.
Next. That's it. If you have contact information, questions, certainly feel free to reach out to me, visit our website as often as needed to gather information. And I think we got it. We're at just turned 3:31, but happy to take any questions.
Just real quick, that webinar you're doing, is there value in your sharing the coordinates with me so I can put it out to people, or is this being run through the administrators of these dual credit only and having their staff come?
Gail, this is Rebecca, and I just put the flyer in the chat, so hopefully you can see that there, and you are welcome to share that out with anyone who would like to attend. And although it's geared toward individuals that are working to become fully credentialed and administrators, really all are welcome.
I was thinking, we could promote it in some of our urban areas too, especially. So.
Sounds great. Thanks, Gail.
Thank you. Thanks, Trish. And folks at CEL, Carrie, thank you. Ken, how long do we need to have for this data sharing agreement? Is this a discussion you want to have today or hold?
Why don't I just make 1 or 2 comments, less than 2 minutes. We have a number of data sharing agreements with the department. This one in particular is really focused on getting a better handle on dual credit. The slide that Trish showed and that Carrie commented upon really underscored the need to try to get a better handle and perhaps more localized handle on the extent to which students of color are present in the school but not taking dual credit, and likewise the racial ethnic composition of the teaching corps is really important. The idea of the agreement is to try to get a better handle on identifying those gaps, areas that we really need to focus attention on. And I would just say this is a really important issue to us. This is, as Trish knows, this is something that I've raised every time we talk about Teach Dual Credit Indiana. And we do have a subcommittee of the dual credit coordinators who have indicated they wanted to work on ways in which more opportunities can be provided to students of color to take and earn more dual credit. There was a slide that Terry showed earlier that indicated while we've had growth in terms of the students of color who have taken dual credit, it doesn't match with the extent to which white students have been taking dual credit. So we're working on this. Any help, any suggestion that might come from council members along these lines would be most welcome.
Thanks, Ken. I think that's the important part. We can share the data, we can keep doubling down on our efforts, but we really need all of you to help. We just aren't where we need to be in this area. So appreciate your help. I think we'll circle back around to think about the next time we want to meet. I think we're probably talking about a spring meeting of some sort, right, Ken?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes. And to the degree that there are things that you'd like to have put on that agenda, You can either circle around with me, with Ken, with Terry, or with Katie or her team, and we can actually work on putting that agenda together for the next. I know we're over about 7 minutes or 5 minutes or so. So thanks for sticking with us and making the time today. And with that, I think we will say goodbye until we meet the next time. And hopefully sometime soon we'll actually get to be in person. Who knows? Hope springs eternal. See ya. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.